Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen and then we will crack on. I hope that you can all see this.
Yes, perfectly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Dario for the very kind offer. It's fantastic to be with all of you here today. And the other presentations, let me tell you, I've taken a lot of notes and we'll be reporting back into senior management on what I've seen today. And I've never felt so at home with a slide that the previous one of the previous speakers put up with the tourism dashboard development project, which, you know, not understanding what we're actually looking at. I feel like I very much feel that comment a lot. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Barry Rogers. I'm the Smart Tourism Programme Manager for Dublin. We are also the Dublin Tourism Unit for Dublin City Council. Today I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm not going to take up too much time, maybe only 10 minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what smart tourism is, but I'm going to focus mostly on our approach to data. We've quite an interesting approach to the way that we gather and understand tourism data, which I'm quite interested to share with you today. So just very quickly, we're not a normal DMO. We're not a big tourism organization. So we focus on tourism development in a very different way to traditional governments and entities. So our smart tourism model is an innovation model for driving positive transformation of our city. The way we do that is a bit different. So we use technology. You know, we're a team of data scientists and technologists, not necessarily marketeers. We use digitalization, and all of this is to build more accessible, more sustainable, and more equitable destinations. These are words I'm sure you're hearing all of the time now, and they've become very in vogue for us tourism developers. So that's what we do. The goal of the Smart Tourism Programme is very, very simple. It's just to establish Dublin as a world-leading smart tourism destination or smart destination. We've been at this for 2 years now. So I'm really getting around to the point that I should have answered this question at this point, and hopefully at the end of this, we might you'll be able to know whether or not we've done this. Okay, so cracking on, we have quite an interesting governance model. So as I said, we're not a DMO. We're not a traditional DMO anyway. We're a collaboration of the major tourism players in the country and in our city. So Dublin City, Ireland gets about 11 million visitors a year. Dublin gets about 6 million. Of that, we get about 4 billion in revenue. I'm currently in the lounge of Dublin Airport that has about 30 million arrivals a year. So you get the idea and the picture of what we're dealing with here. We're quite a large tourism destination, but our governance model is a collaboration between the biggest tourism stakeholders in the city. As well as all of those big stakeholders, our founders and our funders, we also have, at this stage, probably 100 key stakeholders and partners, which span everyone from our tourism industry to our public-private partnerships, which I'll talk a bit about later. We interact with everyone from universities to Google, MasterCard, Airbnb. We like to be friends with absolutely everyone, and throughout our work, we build these relationships all of the time, both at home and overseas. So highly, highly collaborative. We don't work in silos, or we don't work in individual teams. We work across the entire breadth of the city. There are two main areas of our work that really fall into the categories of digital experience development. So that's essentially anything to do with mobile phones or anything digital we have an expertise in on behalf of the city. And what I'm going to talk about today specifically is all of our work in data and insights, which is another 50% of our work. So all of our work is split into two areas, which is data and insights and digital experience development. Okay, so our approach to data is quite straightforward. We are data agnostic. So we are extraordinarily hungry for tourism data. We don't care where it comes from. We don't care how big or small it is. But we will, if it's out there, we will purchase it, hoover it up, or use it. So we have a very diverse tourism data lake for our city. We have all of the traditional infrastructure that normal cities have. We have a giant data lake called Dublinked, which is an open data portal for the city that has about 500 data sets on it. And then underneath that, we have a tourism specific structure as well. And that's really a collaboration between everyone you see here on this slide. So we work with MasterCard, we work with Grant Thornton, we work with the Dublin Economic Monitor, which is the economic analysis part of our city. And we work with the likes of Google as well as our central statistics agencies. And really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to go out and see where is all of this tourism data? Is it of any use to us? Is it free? Is it expensive? How much does it cost? And then we just take anything that we can and distill it down into tangible, usable insight. So if the information coming back from Airbnb or Google isn't useful, we don't use it, we don't purchase it. Thankfully, it's extremely useful and we do use it. So I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. So there's, as I said before, there was an excellent slide up before, which is, you know, what's the point of building big tourism data observatories if nobody can understand what they're looking at? And I say that from the perspective of someone who is currently building a tourism data observatory. But the first thing that we did when we started off was we started writing reports. So we started traditional PDFs in which we used all of those economic indicators, which I talked about, everything from Google, Airbnb, MasterCard spending pulse, flight data, bed data, everything you can imagine. The difference being we put our own thoughts beside it. So we wrote economic advice in each area, and we put this out into the tourism industry every month. So it's very up-to-date live data every single month, everything we can get, 1 month retrospective, and we put it into the hands of tourism leaders with our ideas about what it meant. We didn't just show them graphs and kind of say, here you go. That said, here's a graph. So this is an example of some of the data we're dealing with specifically, okay? In Dublin, we have the highest hotel occupancy of any city in Europe. We have 90% occupancy for my jurisdiction. Okay, quite high. I travel around to a lot of conferences and I always ask them how high their occupancy levels are. And usually occupancy floats between high 60s and high 70s. In Dublin, we have extraordinarily high hotel occupancy, as you can see, but that's not the point. The point is that we know exactly what the hotel occupancy of our city is across each municipality and district. So we don't just treat the city as one region by itself. We break it down into submarkets and we procure data specifically for that, very unique data sources. So just moving on again. So we complement our, what you might call old data, which is our traditional SDR data, which everyone buys, every city in the world buys SDR data. We complement it with Google data. So we have a partnership with Google specifically to access some of their more diverse tourism data sources. And so what we're looking at here is everyone in the world Googling hotel in Dublin over the last year. And so we can tell quite a lot from this, and we can match it up with our kind of STR data, and we can analyze the trend. So we can see the demand, hotel demand for Dublin is back above where it was pre-pandemic levels. Quite an interesting statistic. If you look at the left-hand side of the page, you'll see a big spike. For a long time, we were wondering what this spike was, and it wasn't until one of our colleagues pointed out that it was a very famous musician, country and western musician, who put out tickets for the first time in 5 years in Dublin, and he drove hotel demand for September through the roof for Dublin. So quite interesting things. Like a lot of other cities, we use MasterCard data. So we have the spending pulse, which I was very interested to hear about from other speakers as well. We have this both for Dublin and for Ireland as well. So we can understand the spend split between ourselves, both domestically and internationally. We also have this on a more granular level as well. So we have a team of data scientists who can analyze this specific to things like events, festivals, that kind of thing as well. But broadly, this is quite good data. It doesn't need any interpreting. It's very, very valuable. And our tourism industry find it quite valuable. You can see that from a marketing perspective, if you were to use this as your basis, you would be marketing heavily toward the US, and you would be then going after China, but you have to be realistic about what you can achieve in terms of numbers as well. So it's all about volume plus spend per market. So it's quite interesting. Our biggest market by far, by the way, is the British market. About 2/3 of all visitors to Ireland, but they just don't spend as much as the US. So it's just very, very interesting to see that in the data specifically. We are now at a point, and with Dario's help, we are now at a point of looking specifically at this area of observatory development. And we have come to this point having done all of that back work of data aggregation and manual PDF reporting. And we're at the point now of we're purchasing or we're developing a tourism dashboard. But specifically what we're going to do is we want to create a shared tourism data space for the city. So what we want to develop is a space where tourism leadership can come and find and look at aggregated tourism insights for the city specifically. And that's a bit different to a public observatory, which we considered, because when we go to Google or we go to Airbnb or we go to MasterCard and we say, we want some of your data, they say that's great, we'll give it to you. And sometimes we'll give it to you for free, but you just can't make it public, okay? But there's this area where you can not make it public, but give it to your partners, okay? So you can give it to tourism leadership without making it public. And that's the space we're creating, because we want to be platforming these data sources, which we find extremely interesting. And those are the Google data sources, the Airbnb, the MasterCard spend. The only issue with that is a lot of the time, you can't make that kind of data public. So we're currently in the process of tendering for and building a kind of password protected tourism data space for the city that will be used by, airlines, hotel, museum managers, all this kind of thing. And we do also have a open data platform for tourism as well. And it'll just have more traditional tourism data insights. So just very quickly before I finish up, another presenter has talked about why do we always just talk about quantitative data? Why, we don't often talk about qualitative data. In Dublin, we developed one of the biggest qualitative data sets for cultural experiences in the city. So we did an audit of every cultural experience you can do in the city, and we mapped it on GIS. And then we ended up with this database of, thousands and thousands of experiences within our city. And we now use that database to build orientation tools, app development, website development. In this example, we have tourism kiosks throughout the city. And if you walk up to one of those as a visitor, you will be able to see every cultural tourism data experience in the city. Now, that's still tourism data, but it doesn't, it's not one of the traditional things that we talk about, but it's still very much within our remit. So this is what I mean. This is the biggest cultural tourism data set in the city. There's thousands and thousands of things to see and do, but not necessarily just traditional tourism things, like also things like, history tours, open air cinemas, galleries, yoga classes, knitting classes, things that locals do, not just things visitors do. It's quite interesting. To finish up, just very briefly, the other 50% of our work, we work specifically in having an expertise in digital tourism development. So we've published papers on mobile app development, and we work very specifically in the area of tourism mobile app development as well. So it's not all about data, but the flip side of this is when you use any of our apps or our platforms, we are harvesting data about tourists all the time, and it feeds back into everything we do. So yeah, I'm just going to finish up. we've been very busy the last few years. One of the best things we ever did was we applied for the Tourism Data Mentorship Programme for Europe, and then we got matched with the brilliant Dario, who is helping us tailor our data offering and our data understanding for the next year. And he's been a tremendous help to us in Dublin. And then finally, last week in Seville, we won the award, the Tourism Innovation Award for Best Destination for Innovation and Digital Use. We didn't win the Data Award, that went to Finland, but we won the Digital and Innovation Award. So we're over the moon with that. Thank you so much again for having me. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give you back a bit of your time. I would just say, please, if you ever want to speak to Dublin or interact with Dublin, please just send us an email. We would love to work with you. And I'm so impressed by the other speakers. I've so much to take back home with me. Thank you so much.